Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, the place for internet technology professionals whose work-life balance plan has imploded. We are here to provide solutions that will help the IT pro live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hi, Joanne Victoria here with our guest, Kim McLaughlin. Kim McLaughlin helps people move from struggling with food, weight, and dieting into feeling peaceful with food. She has personal experience with overeating and all the pain that goes with it. Her clients feel heard, understood, accepted, and knowing that they are not alone in their situation. Kim McLaughlin has a master's degree in clinical psychology, which gives her the knowledge, training, experience, and understanding to really help people move out of frustration and into action. She is the author of Amazon #1 best-selling book, Discover Your Inspiration. Kim works with people in groups and individually and would love to talk to you more about your situation and struggles. You can receive her free top tips to end emotional eating on her website, feedyoursoulunlimited.com. Welcome, Kim McLaughlin.
Hi, Joanne. I am so glad to be here and to talk to you and everybody listening. I am super excited because it is the beginning of the year and it just fits in so well with talking about food issues and what goes into changing our relationship with food, because what happens this time of year, and it actually happens all throughout the year, but it happens especially at the time of year. So I think it's a good time to bring it up, is this idea of dieting. And what happens is that one way that people become kind of in that struggling mindset around food is because we have the society accepts this idea of that we have to diet to change our body size and diet to change our relationship with food. And what happens is there then becomes this relationship with food that is about struggle and really about starvation. So if you want to think about it, and this is how people get into trouble with food, and that's why I'm bringing it up, is think about the idea of we struggle with food, and so we might overeat, we eat for emotional reasons, we eat more than our body needs, and then what happens is we then feel guilty and we feel upset. And what happens after that is we decide to go on a diet. And dieting consists of starvation, restriction, I can't have this, I can't have that. And then what happens is as we get into that starvation mode, that diet mode, we then go back into this mindset of I want to overeat. And so it's this, if you could see me right now, I'd be having this circle that goes around and around. So we overeat, then we feel guilty, and we feel upset and possibly have gained weight. We then go into this diet mentality and restriction, and then it goes back again into overeating. And that's the cycle that we get caught up into. And I just see it happen over and over again. And so what I love to talk about with people is that there's this idea of dieting, and I call it we should ditch the diet. And actually dieting has failed us because it got us in that cycle of diet binge guilt. And what I think we all forget is that the dieting industry is actually a $2 billion industry. I just looked it up the other day. And that includes books, programs, diet drugs, weight loss surgery, all the things that go into trying to make us eat differently. And what happens is we go on these diets and they don't work. And then what happens is, it's so interesting, is that we end up thinking that we're the problem consistently. We think that we're the ones who failed. I failed my diet. I was just reading some posts on Facebook to a group I'm a part of, and some people were talking about they're on this diet and that they're failing the diet. They're not doing it right. They're not losing enough weight, and they're not getting the results that they think that they should. And what happens is that if a diet really worked, we wouldn't have to do it again and again and again. And I don't know about you, Joanne, or everybody who's listening, but I've been on plenty of diets. And I haven't been on every diet imaginable. I have some clients I work with who have been on every diet imaginable. I haven't. I've been on a lot of them. And what's interesting is that I've been on the same ones over and over again, expecting a different result. Mm-hmm. And it never happened. And that's a definition of insanity, doing the same things over and over again and expecting a different result. And I think about the idea that if diets really worked, we wouldn't have to keep trying a new one. And that's where I like people to start, is to consider what is that diet mindset that they have and how have they maybe bought into this idea that diets are the only way to get some peace with food, because it doesn't really happen that way. What happens is that generally what happens is you go on a diet, you decrease your calories or decrease the amount of food, or you eat a certain style of food, a combination. You exercise. Generally, you lose weight to a certain point, and then you lose all the weight you think you should, and then you stop the diet, and slowly but surely over the next year or two, you gain the weight back and then some. And we then blame ourselves, saying that we're the problem because we've done it wrong or we can't keep up on the diet. And I want to kind of move into now the idea that you could do something differently and to start imagining a different relationship with food, because really we're supposed to eat. We're supposed to eat at least 3 times a day. I mean, some people eat more smaller meals throughout the day. Some eat 3 meals. Some eat a large meal at the end of the day. Whichever way works for you. I'm not a nutritionist, so I can't say which is the best for each person. You have to find that out for yourself. But what I do know is we have to all eat every day. And if we have this feeling out of control, feeling that we can't manage food, feeling upset when we eat more than our body needs, when we have this relationship with food where we have bad foods where we can't have them and good foods. Bad foods are always the sweet, salty, fatty, high carbohydrate food, boxed food. All those kind of foods are what people generally call bad foods. And the good foods are all of the veggies and everything that is lean is all of the good foods. And what happens is that when we start categorizing food as good and bad, we then start wanting the things that we think we can't have.
Right.
Right? I mean, like if I say, you can't have that cake, and you'll look over, what cake? What do you mean I can't have the cake? Where? What's the cake? And it's a different reaction than if I say you can't have those carrots. Carrots are the good food. And so we then have this relationship with bad, quote unquote, I always use it in quotes, quote unquote, bad food. And it makes us want it even more. So some of the things I suggest for people is to start moving away from that diet mindset to really look at, how am I starving myself? And how can I have a relationship with food? One of the ways to have a different relationship with food is to start having the idea that food is food. It's not good food. It's not bad food. There is no good food. There is no bad food. There is food that makes my body work better. And there's food that makes my body not respond well. For me, sometimes if I have like a meal, a heavy fatty meal, like I have to really consider, is that what I really want? And what am I doing afterwards? And how is it physically going to make me feel?
Right.
And how is it going to make me feel emotionally? How am I going to feel about myself after I have it? And it's a little different mind twist. So it's not saying I can't. And what I love to have people do is move from saying I can't to I choose not to. Or that's not going to feel really good in my tummy. That's often what I say is like there's some foods that like I just don't have very often at all because it just doesn't feel good in my stomach. And I know I'm going to feel bloated. I know I'm going to feel tired. I know I might have tummy problems. And I just say, yeah, no, that doesn't work for me. It takes a while to get to that point, but first beginning to notice, do I have this separation of good and bad food? And just saying, food is food. Which food is going to give me the energy, the stamina, the good feeling in my body of what I need? And sometimes it could be those foods that we would generally call, or people would generally call, bad foods. And it's just food is food, which is the food that helps my body the best. At the end of this program, we're going to give out a website, but there's this freebie that I have that's top tips to end emotional eating. And one of the things in that is how to start noticing in your body, physically, am I hungry? Because that's always the starting spot to eating, as far as I'm concerned, is how am I physically hungry? And what happened is that as we've been on diets over years and years and years, we've lost that sense of, am I physically hungry? What does my body really need? Because we've been so focused on what our diet tells us to eat, or what the latest food guru says we're supposed to eat, or, you're not supposed to eat breakfast, or you're supposed to have a big breakfast, or you're supposed to have a big dinner, or you're supposed to have no dinner. Everybody has a different idea about how you're supposed to eat. And what I like to come back to is figuring out physically for yourself, when am I hungry? When am I full? And what can go into, or kind of take us away from knowing if we're physically hungry or physically full, is our emotions.
Yeah,
and
I get that. Yeah, this is what you're hitting some spots here. I know that when you're talking about food that may or may not be good for, I'll talk about myself, obviously. I know that I can only have good pizza a couple times a year. Mm-hmm. And I know that I can only do it like on a Friday. So that my body has the Saturday and the Sunday to work itself through. And I know that I can't overindulge. I cannot have, years ago, I could eat anything. When I was a kid, I could eat anything. And I don't even know where this body consciousness and diet consciousness stuff came into play, because it never affected me as a younger person. Not that I'm 100, but, there comes a point where your body goes, that's not good for you anymore.
Yes.
So, I can only have... And I know when I'm eating it, I better damn well enjoy it, because I ain't going to have it for a long time to come.
Yes.
Because it's going to, it's just not going to sit that well in my body. But it tastes good. It delivers all those olfactory things that I want. And I know that I can enjoy that because I know what the outcome is going to be. And also that many years ago, I think I was at a spa of some nature. I can't remember. And I got served breakfast every day, which was unusual for me because I don't think up until that point in time I would eat breakfast. I would just burn, through until I was passing out or some such nonsense. Yes. And once I started eating breakfast every day, I do not skip breakfast ever. I try not to eat until I'm hungry, but by the way I have my schedule, I'm hungry in the morning. So I know that for me, it works to have breakfast, and I pretty much have the same food every day. And that's one thing that I found that works for me. But there are times when I go to the quote-unquote bad list that, I go, well, let's stall by... And it takes time when you're talking about not, defining food as good or bad, just food, but knowing how it affects your body.
That is such a good point.
And that's
what I wondered is that, and so what you're looking at is like you're talking about eating foods that are noticing what are you eating and how am I going to feel afterwards.
Absolutely.
And then you eat when you eat and feel satisfied, right? That's what I heard you say about the pizza.
Yes. I'll eat 2 pieces. That's probably the max I'll go, is 2 pieces of good pizza. Not, it's good pizza. And when I say good, it tastes like it's Italian. But I will have 2 pieces, and I will enjoy every mouthful, because I know it'll probably be another 6 months or more before I have it again. Because I know what it's going to do to me. I know how I'm going to feel because of, I'm conscious of that. However, that other side where I go, but I want that bad thing, because I don't consider pizza bad, because it just doesn't work for me that often. Some people eat it all the time. And it's like the other things the way I look at it is I have to look at, like, is it fake? And if it's fake, I know I'm going to be eating chemicals, and chemicals don't work for me. So I can't eat the chemicals. Right. Chemicals are worse than pizza.
Right. And so you've decided. So what you've done is, you've been conscious to notice how does it make you feel, and the next step that you've taken is you decided, well, that's not okay for me. You said, this isn't celebrating my body, or doesn't make my body feel good, and that's
Correct.
not okay for me. What happens is, actually, with a lot of people, is that they know the food is going to make them sick. And they eat it anyway and don't feel that they can stop. I have people that I work with that like they have allergies to food, and they know their tummy is they're going to have a very upset stomach if they eat a certain food and they eat it, or they know if they eat a certain food, their face will break out. They know it. And so imagine then eating it, knowing that you're going to be sick, basically, and not feeling like you can stop it at all, and like it goes on and on and on. Yours is what I love about what you're saying is, like, you know what, and I do it. There's only certain things that I want that I say, you know what, and I'll put up with it, and I'll do it for this little bit of time, I know, and I'm just going to move on. I'm going to move on, and you don't feel guilty about it.
But that takes years.
Yes.
That takes someone like yourself. It takes a lot of work, and that's why I hope the people listening know that this is not what I'm talking about. Has been taking years of trial and error. I certainly have sensitivity to certain foods. My body retains fluid if it's salty. Blah blah blah. Everybody's got whatever their telltale signs are, but it's taken years to get to this place where I'm at least semi-conscious, maybe 87%, conscious of what the heck I'm doing regarding food.
And you decided so you've been conscious of it, and then you decided to make the decision that how you feel, it's actually a sign of high self-esteem, really, is that saying that I am worth not feeling bad in my body, or my body feeling upset and me feeling upset with myself. I am worth it. And what happens is when we continue to eat things that we know don't make us feel good, we feel even worse about ourselves. So our self-esteem drops again and drops again and drops again. And we feel out of control, like I can't stop it. I can't not eat it. Well, that's all emotional. That's
Correct.
all that emotional eating. And so if the way to move through that is begin to start noticing what foods are kind of triggering to me, and what is going on with me. How am I feeling in my life and in myself that leads me to want to eat something that doesn't feel good to me? And then beginning to notice, like, what are the feelings? Happy, sad, mad, lonely, frustrated, angry, bored is a big one. Loneliness is a big one. And start noticing, so what's going on for me emotionally that I am feeling challenged by food, or feeling like food has a grip on me? Because what happens is when we overeat, there's a point that feels really good. It feels happy.
Just this side of unconsciousness.
Yeah.
Just this side of I'm falling asleep. Just this side of You know, just that, Ed, there's that line. It's not a fine line, but there's a line that says, one more bite and I'm done.
And what happens is when we go unconscious, we can't stop at that line.
Right.
And we then go into that kind of unconscious feeling where we're not connected back to our body and the physical sensations, and we're not connected emotionally. We're feeling guilty and upset. It overrides all the other feelings. And so we get started because it tastes good and it feels good initially, and then there's a point where it flips. And we go unconscious and just keep eating it and really kind of making ourselves feel worse and not feeling like we can stop. And what I want people to know is that there is a way to stop. It doesn't have to be kind of like a life sentence that you're just destined to never work through this. And it doesn't mean you have to diet, because dieting doesn't address any of these issues. It just tells you what foods to eat and what foods not to eat and when to eat and not. And what we're looking at is like, that doesn't help. That doesn't get to the problem.
And it also
the solution, I should say.
It also infantilizes people. It turns them into children in telling them what to do, when to do. They've taken all the power is gone.
Right.
And they have no personal power because it's called the diet, not the thing I'm doing, but the diet as if it's separate from themselves. So, as you say, if the diet doesn't work, or I'm not working with the diet, but it's like they're children again.
Yes. And what happens is then rebellion, and what happens is then rebellion comes in, and we say, stop diet, stop telling me what to do. I can do whatever I want, and we rebel. And that's exactly how that circle goes, that cycle of, I feel like I'm being told or dictated to, I have no control. Well, once we but then we don't know how to, I don't think food is about controlling it. It's more about how I manage it or what fits for me. And once we get into a place of peace and I feel peaceful with food, I know what my body needs. I know when I'm hungry. I know when I'm full. I get when I'm feeling emotional, and I want to overeat when I'm emotional, or I want to eat certain foods. And then I understand that. And so then I deal with my foods in a more functional manner. So then I don't have to overeat. If I'm dealing with all of my emotions and acknowledging them and processing or kind of doing whatever it is that certain emotion is calling for, I'm going to be a lot less likely to overeat, to want to overeat, or to want to binge, or to even be really attracted to the foods that don't fit well in my body. Because
this is what you do for people. I want people that are listening know that this is what you do for people. You show them how to look at food differently. That's what it's all about. And seeing how they can take charge of their own lives and be in charge of their own lives and not give up any of their personal power. We have to give up so much as it is. To give it up to some artifice is ridiculous. Of course, everything and then, as they say, we become robots or infants again. And I don't know when this whole issue of diets really came into play. Must have been Weight Watchers years ago. But I don't remember this body consciousness being so prevailing as it is today.
It's an industry. Well, but remember, it's what did I say? $20 million or $20 billion.
No, you said I thought you said $2 billion.
No. 20 billion.
Yeah, that I believe. $2 billion. Yes.
20 billion. And it's an industry. It makes people money, and so. Well, if we get so think of this. If I buy a book, if I go take a diet drug, or I go on a program and I get fixed, there's no more money for the industry.
Right.
It wouldn't be a $20 billion industry if it worked.
That's right.
Right?
Absolutely.
They'd start losing money because we'd all be done. And we're not. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and different things are added on. I'm always interested. I look on Yahoo often, what's the latest diet? Who's the latest person that lost weight on whatever? And there's always a new diet or a new twist to an old diet that shows up. Or now lots of weight loss surgery is showing up. And it's because people are feeling so desperate. And if it worked, it wouldn't be a $20 billion industry.
Yeah, it's the fear issue again. That's what people in our country especially have been in fear for a very, very long time. So anything that will take them out of that fear, be it a diet, something, it's temporary, it's just like drugs. Because it is a drug. A diet is a drug. People don't get that. It's just something else outside of yourself that you choose instead of being powerful within yourself.
Yes.
So what is this free gift that you have for our listeners? I don't want to forget it. And how can they get it?
Oh, my goodness. It is super. It's the starting point, and it's something I love to give away. And so it's called Top Tips to End Emotional Eating. It's on my website, feedyoursoulunlimited.com. If you go to that first page, look over on the right-hand side, click on it, put your name and your email, and you'll start getting it immediately. What it is it's a way to start noticing physically, where are you? What happens is through diets is we're out of contact with our body, with physically where we are in terms of food. And so it starts you on the process of determining, am I hungry? I have a whole scale of how to figure out when are you hungry, when are you full, and you start tracking it for yourself to start noticing, well, am I hungry? How hungry am I? And then you start thinking about what should I eat? And then I have a whole food mood log to start noticing, when am I more hungry? When am I emotionally hungry? When am I feeling out of control with food? So you can start tracking it. So you can start looking at, well, what's coming into play? If a lot of people I work with have, they tend to binge in the evening time. And when we look at it, more often than not, what we find is the feelings at the end of the day are lonely and bored. So if you're overeating over lonely and bored at the end of the day, well, let's find some ways that manage that or deal with that lonely, bored feeling. And then you feel more powerful and you don't have to overeat because you're satisfying yourself. You're satisfying those emotions with what's necessary, dealing with the lonely and bored rather than using food to deal with lonely and bored. So that's what the top tips to end emotional eating are all about. It's the starting point to looking at food differently. And I'm excited to have people use it and try it because it really, really works.
There you go. It really, really works. Can't get any better than that. Yeah. And thank you very much for being here today, Kim McLaughlin. And this is an interesting topic. I don't think there's enough that can be said about it, especially in this day and age with people, again, not willing to take responsibility for themselves and their lives and their bodies and their minds. But hopefully this is another way that our listeners can learn to be accountable to themselves for their own food intake, going to her feedyoursoulunlimited.com website and get these free top tips to end emotional eating. And we thank you for your time here today, Kim. It's been great, and I know people are going to use some of your tips, if not all of them, to make themselves a better food life. Have a wonderful day. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com and continue the conversation on her podcast page. And get a free copy of her book, The True Self Handbook, a guide to transform your life. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.